This is Jordan Peterson.
It's obvious that the progressives will sacrifice the poor to nature, right? To nature worship, to Gaia, this imaginary catastrophe that justifies degrowth, for example.
In all honesty, I thought people had stopped paying attention to him quite some time ago, but he has a huge presence on YouTube, and it's relevant to this channel that in the last year he's been focusing on degrowth as part of what he views as a leftist ideology of nature worship. Peterson is a controversial former University of Toronto psychology professor who came to prominence in debates around compulsory use of gender pronouns. He then went on in 2018 to publish the best-selling book 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, before disappearing from public life for a while as he battled addiction issues. He was described in The New Yorker in 2018 as one of the most influential and polarizing public intellectuals in the English-speaking world. I thought we should take a look at some clips of Peterson talking about degrowth and tackle some of the underlying misconceptions he has and the myths that he propagates.
It's obvious that the progressives will sacrifice the poor to nature, right? To nature worship, to Gaia, this imaginary catastrophe that justifies degrowth, for example. What the hell do you think degrowth means? If you don't think that means starving poor people, you're an idiot.
First, we have this claim that the agenda is to sacrifice the poor. In fact, the aim of degrowth is to sacrifice the privileges of a small, rich elite who have a disproportionate impact on the planet. After all, as studies have shown, the richest 1% are responsible for more carbon emissions than the poorest 66%. The rich are the ones flying around the planet on private jets and polluting with their enormous private yachts. Instead, degrowth advocates focus on redistribution of wealth and improving the lives of the poor through things like universal basic services.
And you might say, well, there's too many people on the planet anyways, in which case I would say, then leave.
Here, Peterson associates degrowth with perspectives that the planet is overpopulated. The most prevalent view on population that I've seen in degrowth literatures is again that the issue is with a small minority of the global population, capitalists and the super wealthy, and that population is not really discussed in this work. After all, focusing on aggregate population would distract from a more nuanced approach to who is really driving catastrophic environmental change. In reality, birth rates across the globe are falling, and forecasts indicate that the global population is likely to peak in the not-so-distant future. As one scientist put it, what we are experiencing now, and have been experiencing for decades, is something that we have not seen before in human history, which is a large-scale, cross-national, cross-cultural shift towards preferring and having smaller families. Population is a complex topic that we will tackle elsewhere in a different video, but it's safe to say that it's a smokescreen to distract from tackling real environmental and economic inequalities. Peterson returns to accuse degrowthers of believing in overpopulation in an interview with Bjorn Lomborg, the controversial author of The Skeptical Environmentalist, who has famously argued that the negative impacts of the ecological crisis are overstated, and who has been consistently accused of cherry-picking to give a rose-tinted perspective on innovation, technology, and the climate.
The degrowth model is predicated on the idea that, well, let's lay out the ideas, that really there are too many people on the planet, and the people who are there now, especially the rich ones, are consuming far too many resources per capita. And so the only way forward to a sustainable planet is through degrowth.
Here, while misunderstanding the general stance on population, Peterson does at least raise the issue of inequality, which I spoke to above.
Okay, so let's take that apart. First of all, who's going to impose that degrowth? Like, can you imagine the totalitarian state that would have to be built in order for every single one of your purchases to be monitored, which is really what the plan is in some real sense? I mean, that's just a terrible, nightmarish vision of petty tyranny everywhere.
In this clip, Peterson asks who is going to impose degrowth and assumes it would involve an imposed global governmental program of monitoring. What he refuses to consider are the various ways communities at different scales realize and democratically develop limits, and which allow them to share resources and thrive without destroying the planet. Degrowth research is particularly focused on ways of democratically increasing abundance in collective goods, while limiting frivolous or harmful material throughput.
This degrowth philosophy, which violates the presuppositions of economic motivation, let's say on a psychological and economic front, is not only going to demolish the industrial structure, make the poor much poorer and more desperate, but it's going to bring about worsening of the conditions for environmental sustainability.
Peterson argues that degrowth violates basic economic behavioral laws and that degrowth will worsen conditions of environmental sustainability. The first accusation is pure neoclassical economic ideology. There are human cultures, not laws of economic behavior and psychological constants. As for the idea that degrowth will worsen conditions of environmental sustainability, Peterson points to the phasing out of nuclear, which he holds as a green form of energy. It's true that some countries have shifted back towards coal and gas, given energy crises, but this is more based on meeting the requirements of a growth-based economy than anything that can be blamed on degrowth.
And then what you have is this insistence that the way to planetary salvation is to tell other people what they don't get to have. And what's interesting about that too, and this is the hypocritical element, and I certainly see this at the elite Davos global level, it's like, well, exactly who are you telling here that they don't get to have what they need? Because you don't mean that for yourself. You're not going to go live in a damn hut in the middle of Africa and burn dung. You're not proposing that. You're proposing that these damn poor people in the third world country, and maybe in your own country, and there's too many of those blighters anyways, that they should just be bloody well satisfied with the fact that they've got what they have now, and they shouldn't in any manner ever dream of having this sort of wealth of opportunities and security that we have in the West.
Associating degrowth, or even environmental protection in general, with deprivation is a straw man. We need to negotiate and debate what a future will look like, but we should not assume that the alienating, planet-destroying mode of existence prevalent in the West over the last century is the only path to well-being and collective flourishing. There is much more we could discuss from this interview, but finally for Peterson, degrowth doesn't offer a positive vision. There are many flavours of degrowth, and many positive visions in terms of appropriate technology, sustainable housing, mobility, energy, and rich communal living. In fact, much energy is spent stepping back and examining what it would take to create a good life for all within planetary boundaries. Yes, there are difficult questions to be asked and challenges to be faced. But in a recent paper in the journal Ecological Economics, scholars identify a range of interventions that could overcome vulnerability, including specific versions of universal basic services, a universal basic income, a minimum income guarantee, a job guarantee, living wages, work time reduction, and a pension guarantee, alongside changes in capital-labour relations and a shift to not-for-profit provisioning. Such interventions could secure livelihoods in volatile or contracting economies and make stringent environmental policies socially sustainable and more politically palatable. So, had you come across Jordan Peterson before? Did you agree or disagree particularly with any of his perspectives on degrowth? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And join me and others over at the Nowtopia Patreon for a free monthly post-capitalism and degrowth reading list and other goodies. Your support allows me to continue working on these issues. Thank you for watching.